Hello, everyone. I'm Paula Seanez. Kinslachitni, Schneido Tohiglini Vashichin, Hanrahni Dashichin Dashinala. And I'm from the Navajo Nation, and I'm the director for the Navajo Nation's Vocational Rehabilitation Program. I wanted to allow Tracy to introduce herself. She's from Rehab Services Administration, and we'll all know how to pronounce her last name.
I'm Tracy Zwei Perziowski. I'm the statewide transition coordinator for vocational rehabilitation under Arizona Rehabilitation Services. Thank you, Paula.
So we wanted to thank you for allowing us to share some information with you at your 5th annual Indigenous Youth Disabilities Summit. We really enjoyed the panel. It really reflects your theme, which is Dream the Impossible through Resilience and Perseverance. And we really like to hear that the focus is on culture and language. We definitely know through our work in the rehabilitation field, the special education field, that language and culture are our strength. So I'm glad to see that our youth are embracing our culture, our language, and they're coming from a strength-based approach. We wanted to share with you some information regarding facilitating successful transition services for students. We usually do this presentation as a community of practice presentation, including behavioral health, the health programs, and education and rehab services, as well as the tribal voc rehab programs. However, we have pared down the presentation to include information about what the role of special education is. We'll talk a little bit about vocational rehabilitation from the Navajo Nation perspective. And then we will also talk about our partnership with Arizona Rehabilitation Services, which is the state vocational rehab agency, as well as we'll end out with some of our other partnerships with the Sonoran Center and so forth. So go to the next slide. So some of our presentation outcomes, you can include all of those, Rosa. We wanted, again, to give you an awareness of some of the key supports and services that are available for individuals with disabilities. What services are available while in high school and secondary education, and then as well as students exit high school. This perspective will primarily be from what is the school's role, what is Rehab Services Administration's role, which is Arizona Vocational Rehab Agency, and then the Navajo Nation Office of Special Ed Rehab Services. We want to describe to you what vocational rehabilitation services are available for transitioning youth. We also want to provide you some of the eligibility requirements for those supports and services, and then also just allow you to ask questions to learn more and provide you with our contact information. Next slide. Again, Tracy will be covering the community of practice that is a strong interagency collaboration in the state of Arizona. However, we want to just facilitate a discussion and provide information about the various supports and services available to students when they become adults. We generally, as I mentioned earlier, talk from a more expansive interagency collaboration through Arizona RSA, which is Vocational Rehabilitation, Division of Developmental Disabilities, Office of Children with Special Healthcare Needs, Division of Behavioral Health, and Navajo Nation is one of the tribal 121 programs. And so we generally during the transition conferences each year that is hosted by Arizona Department of Education. We generally cover this information from all of those perspectives. But today we'll primarily be focusing on some of the school requirements, and then as well as the rehab services, vocation rehab services that are available. Next slide. Again, we also want to just provide some guidance for professionals that are here and are working with transition, to also introduce some of the students that are here on this in this summit about the transition processes, and what to expect when they from post-secondary services. So next slide.
So what is a community of practice, right? So this is where we have our state and local agencies coming together around a shared interest to improve those post-school outcomes for youth and helping with that transition process. So really, we're coming together as a community to address issues such as meaningful youth involvement, increasing post-secondary education options for success, improving employment outcomes, maybe outreach to child welfare, juvenile justice, mental health, as well as addressing community needs like accessible transportation, which we all know comes really necessary in our rural areas. And then we have the Arizona Community of Practice, which is currently made up of several groups of individuals from different agencies that feel passionate about transition. And we're looking at it from different angles, like healthcare transition, as well as transition from school to work, transition through behavioral health services in different areas that youth may experience transitions in their life. The Arizona Community of Practice meets regularly. We're currently meeting the first Thursday of every month from 10 to 11:30. And we collaborate and develop and coordinate transition services, some professional development opportunities, resources related to improving the transition experience. One of those resources that you may or may not have heard of is actually on the Community of Practice website, which is the Navigating Life Transitions transition guide that was created. And then I'll put a link to that in the chat, actually, so that you can utilize that resource. But that's one of the things that we've done with this community of practice that's been good as part of that. And primarily, the goal is to get a greater focus on meaningful youth and family involvement in the process. We want to see youth and family involved in these transition communities of practice as well, because your voice is so important. Next slide.
Tracy, do you want to speak just briefly about the goal of also having local community of practices?
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. We do have several local communities of practice across the state. And we can also find more information about those on the website. But we are always looking to start those in areas that maybe don't have a local community of practice. We do have several in different areas. I know we've got one running in Kingman right now. There's one in Pinal County, Pima, Cochise County, Yuma County. But we're always looking to be including those communities of practice so that those communities can come together and have those discussions and work on transition in their area as part of this process. The Arizona Community of Practice is willing to help support that, providing resources, a member to kind of help mentor as well. So those are things that we can do to help support those local communities of practice to start working on what they need in their areas. Is there anything you might add, Paula?
Again, the statewide community of practice is looking at systems level work. So for instance, we have a memorandum of agreement with Arizona RSA, and It details how we will work together regarding transition services. It covers a number of different areas, but that's the state level, state tribal level systems, planning and thinking. And then the local community practice. So for instance, in Tuba City or Window Rock or Kayenta, these local schools can develop a local community practice to utilize the resources in the area, to also involve parents, to have parent nights and different types of professional development, and again, increase the awareness about the importance of transition. So we just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the state level community practice initiatives, and also there's a push towards, or having a goal towards, having local community of practice, so that we can improve transition resources in our local communities. So with that, we wanted to also talk a little bit about the school's responsibility, and of course, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is the law that assures free and appropriate public education for students with disabilities. And so the eligibility for special ed, and students are evaluated and are found qualified for one of the 14 categories of disability that are contained in IDEA. We're currently continuing to operate under the most recent IDEA, which is 2004, and the Code of Federal Regulations and information is at the bottom. And to determine eligibility, a multidisciplinary team of special ed and related services are required to identify someone that has a disability and is eligible under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Next slide. Continuing with what some of the public school responsibilities are, or roles around transition, we will cover some of those slides as well. So the services are provided by a school, secondary education, on an individualized education program. And so the schools develop IEPs with the student and parent. And of course, preferably we would like to see student-led IEPs, where advocates like the individuals who are students with disabilities would facilitate their own IEPs. So there's transition services that must be provided on those, identified on those IEPs. And they must be in effect when the student turns 16 or younger, if that transition team, IEP team, determines that transition services would be appropriate. Next slide. So IDEA defines what transition services are. And again, we're covering these slides so that students, parents that are in this session can take this information, use it as part of your toolkit in advocating for yourself or your student. And it's a coordinated set of activities. It includes a course of study, and it's designed for, it's a process that's designed as a results-oriented process plan. The focus is on improving academic and also the functional achievement aspects of a student. It's designed to facilitate the students' transition or movement from the school to post-school activities. So it's not, it may not always be employment, it may be independent living services, and Tracy will cover some of those areas in the next few slides. But it's a plan with outcomes based on individual needs, taking into account its strength base, looking at the students' strengths, their preferences, interests. And so again, I really want to emphasize that that these transition plans need to be strengths-based. We heard earlier about the language and culture being a strength, and that students are embracing their language and culture. And again, each of you talked about having a voice on the student panel. So having a voice in your transition process and developing those post-secondary goals is definitely important. Next slide. So these are the required components of an individualized education program. And the 8 IEP components, they must have measurable post-secondary goals. And those goals need to be updated annually. Age-appropriate transition assessments. Assessments are always so important in terms of looking at a student's interests, their priorities, their concerns. It also includes a course of study, a coordinated set of activities, and the components need to be aligned with the annual IEP goals. Students, of course, are the ones that invite agencies to the IEP meetings, and outside agencies that are invited, they need prior consent to attend and participate in those IEP meetings. Oftentimes we encourage students and special ed facilitators, educators, and even the vocational rehab counselors to also look at a person-centered approach to planning with students. A person-centered planning approach really identifies that student as the individual in the center of all these resources that can be provided. What's important to them, their family, some of their hobbies that might be important to them to help them get at what their interest areas are. Next slide.
So as Paula was talking about involving outside the agencies in transition planning, it is sometimes a really important part of this planning. They might be able to provide extra transition services. So you want to invite those DDD workers or the Department of Developmental Disabilities case managers. You want to invite, if you're working with a VR representative, either your tribal VR or a state agency VR, to be a part of those meetings, because they're going to have other services that can support that transition process. You know, that you may not be aware of. So they'll be able to tell what are those services that are available. And they may know of other services in your community that may be able to support those goals and strengths that you're talking about as a student, or you as the family are talking about for your student. You know, it's there to help you prepare for what you want to do in the future. You want to carefully consider who you invite to your individualized education plan as part of that individualized education plan team, and what information they might need from you so that they can be prepared to come to that meeting for you. And make sure that if you're a professional working with a student, that you're getting that consent from the student and the family prior to just showing up at a meeting. That would be, you know, working with that family and that student to make sure that the right permissions are given as part of that. And, you know, reviewing any of that information from an IEP meeting or a special education staff and the student's education and career action plan to develop those measurable post-secondary goals, whether that's in employment or education, whether you're transitioning to a job or further education for a job, or even just those life skills to get to that next phase of where you're transitioning to as a youth. And looking at that transition plan as something enactable that hopefully you guys are coming up with, and that student is the centerpiece of, and they're being an active participant in that plan. Next slide.
Sorry about the typing. I was forgot to mute, and I was responding to one of the questions in the chat. One of the questions asks, at what age does this start happening, junior or senior years, and what if the youth stays until age 22? The IDEA requires that transition begin at age 16. Prior amendments to IDEA started transition at age 14, but the most current IDEA statute that we are going by is 2004. And so transition begins at age 16 through when the student exits. So we don't necessarily talk about junior year, senior year most of the time. So we talk about the age of the student. And that's a school requirement in terms of transition services, age 16. It can start earlier if the multidisciplinary team sees it as appropriate for that student. And so, and the transition services or special ed and related services will go through when the student exits. If they drop out, transition services need to happen. So through age 21, age 22, if the student stays through age 22. You want to add anything to that, Tracy?
I do know that Arizona Department of Ed has been talking about having these plans start earlier as far as, but it is the requirement for 16 as far as I know.
This next slide, again, we want to emphasize the development of quality partnerships. It's all about relationships when we talk about transition. Here on the Navajo Nation, it's about our relationship with vocational rehabilitation with each school because we'll be receiving referrals from the schools. So it is the really the responsibility of the individual education program team facilitator to identify when and how to involve adult agencies. Tracy and I represent vocational rehabilitation. Our counselors with our program and the state programs will be invited to IEP meetings to begin understanding those students that are going to be referred to our agency. We often go into the schools when we're invited to provide presentations about vocational rehabilitations and any other resources that would be available in their community. It's also important for the team facilitator to learn about the adult agency's eligibility requirements. Each program, as we mentioned before, developmental disabilities, Navajo Nation Vocational Rehabilitation Services, State VR, we all have eligibility requirements, and understanding what is available for students and the eligibility criteria is important. Also to work collaboratively with the adult agencies and the family prior to the IEP meeting to develop that draft IEP. So again, families are very important in the process in helping their student advocate for themselves. We also would encourage it to coordinate periodic parent nights or evening events that focuses on meeting with and exploring what services and supports are available for those students with disabilities. So again, maybe having a parent night and invite the various resources to the school to learn more about how what transition resources are available. Do you want to add anything to that, Tracy? If not, next slide.
Just wanted to say that, we are always willing to come in and provide information and support that we can, as well as share, resources and information that you may not be aware of, that we may have some knowledge of. So it becomes very valuable for agencies to work together so that we're not working at different purposes. So we're all working towards the same identified goal. It really kind of streamlines things a lot to have us all working in the same direction that the student is wanting to go.
Tracy, there's a comment in the chat box or question. What if transition was skipped and created by the school without parent or student input?
So I am aware that they're required to make a certain number of attempts for that involvement, but I would just say be advocating for yourself and your students. I would contact them and have that discussion. But if it's past the time and school has already gone past, reach out to the agencies. We can always meet with students after and start talking about where they're at and meeting them where they're at to start doing those things that they need to transition, whether that's going to be into an employment setting or into the next step of school or into the next step of independent living. We will do our best to try and support that next transition. Paula, was there anything you wanted to add?
Again, the only thing I want to add is the importance of the parent training information centers. State special education programs are funded out of the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Ed Programs. Under Office of Special Ed Programs, they also fund parent training information centers. And those parent training, PTIs, oftentimes they're called, are very excellent resources for parents and students to learn about their rights, their responsibilities, about resources, about specific types of disability categories. Here in Arizona, there's Raising Special Kids. And I think there's two agencies, right, Tracy? But I know of Raising Special Kids. And like in New Mexico, we work closely with parents reaching out. And in Utah, there's a Utah Parent Center. Those PTIs are good resources to help you advocate, help you work with the schools so that your student does get the necessary services they need. Okay, next.
All right. So one of the things that you also should be looking for as your student is progressing through high school and getting ready to exit is the summary of performance and transition. It's a collaboration tool. And so it's a separate document. It's not really required to be part of the individualized education plan, but this document goes with the student when they exit high school. And it is designed to detail some of the information of what that student's been doing and what they've been working on. So it usually is given to students that are in their last year of high school. They may start doing it earlier than graduation, but they should be getting it somewhere within their because they're going to be graduating with a regular education deployment, or maybe they're aging out of being able to remain in the school setting. So can we go to the next slide? So really there's three components to this document. So there's a summary of their academic achievements. So it should be talking about those different academic areas. that they've participated in. So written language, reading, math, all of those core things that they have done. So vocational, if they've done any exploration or assessments, any job training at the school, those should also be listed, or those activities that maybe they've done with partner agencies, potentially. Learning school skills like keyboarding, note-taking, homework, management of time, those kind of things. And then there's also the functional performance. So the functional performance is going to be looking at things like social skills and behaviors. So like interactions with teachers and peers, how they're asking for assistance, how responsive they're being, accommodate in their services and accommodations, independent living skills like taking care of themselves, transportation, taking that transportation places, maybe budgeting, baking, those kind of things, how they're doing with accessing their environment. So getting around on their own, communication, how they're doing with, communicating with others. Are they utilizing assistive technology, or communication device when necessary? That self-determination and advocacy is part of that as well. And then vocational training and transition to employment activities would also be under that functional performance, which would be about that career exploration and job training pieces. And then any other additional, things they need to be making considerations of. Maybe medical transition might be one of those. So maybe they're medically fragile and they need to learn about how it's going to transition from a youth care to an adult care facility, and what do they need to know about that, and any other decision-making things. And then the last one is talking about recommendations on how to assist the student in meeting those measurable post-secondary goals. So are they going to need modifications to certain materials to be successful, accommodations, and the assistive technology that they might have been using that they may need as they progress forward into the next phase? Paula, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered it well.
All right.
Next slide. So we're going to transition into what resources are available from the Navajo Nation Office of Special Ed and Rehabilitation Services. We're one of 6 programs in the state of Arizona. And so next slide. Navajo Nation was one of the first, American Indian Vocational Rehabilitation Program funded in the U.S. As you're aware, there's 574 federally recognized tribes currently, based on the Navajo Nation's advocacy. Congress included Section 121 in the Rehabilitation Act. And again, for you youth out there, again, look at these pieces of legislation and understand their history, because we need to look, as you know, we need to understand where we come from and to know where we're going. So the Rehabilitation Act is a statute that we are funded under, and the Arizona Rehab Services Administration is also funded under the Rehabilitation Act. So the Navajo Nation is currently one of 84 tribes that are funded under the American Indian Vocational Rehab Services. The Indian Self-Determination Act is a statute that allowed tribes to implement. As sovereign nations, we have the inherent right to provide services to our own people that's community-based and is based on our language and culture. Here on the Navajo Nation, the leaders like Dr. Elmer Guy, who is currently the president of the Navajo Technical University. I know that Treva Roanhorse is on this in this session. Individuals like those folks who utilize the tenets of the Self-Determination Act to advocate for the Navajo people to have their own vocational rehabilitation program. So we are a longstanding program. We will be celebrating our 50 years in this upcoming year. We've been collaborating with Arizona RSA since our program was developed. So I'm glad that Tracy was able to join me in this presentation because Arizona DES Rehab Services Administration had awarded an initial grant to help develop our program. And again, it's next slide. The American Indian Vocational Rehab Services allows us to provide culturally relevant services. You can go back, sorry, back to slide 14. So it allows us to provide culturally relevant services. It also allows us to provide services on or near tribal lands. And some of the, as I mentioned, some of the amendments were critical to expanding vocational rehab services to American Indian, Alaska Native people. And again, it's based on their own language, their own culture. Our programs are discretionary grant funding, however. Discretionary grants, we have to compete for our grants every 5 years. The Navajo Nation commits 10% of the funds, and the federal government authorizes 90% of the funds. And again, the purpose is to assist tribal governments to develop and increase their capacity to provide vocational rehabilitation services in a culturally relevant manner to American Indians and Alaska Natives with disabilities residing on or near their native lands. So the next slide. There are 6 programs on the Navajo, I'm sorry. So I wanted to share with you the Office of Special Ed and Rehab Services programs. We're not just about vocational rehabilitation services. Navajo Nation also provides vocational rehabilitation, independent living, early childhood intervention for infant and toddlers birth to age 5. We also administer the trust funds for people with disabilities. And we do this in collaboration with the Navajo Nation Advisory Council for people with disabilities. And independent living services is funded by the Navajo Nation. Navajo Nation Council authorized trust funds, which is a set aside to provide services for individuals who have significant disabilities. And it's helping the individuals to get around in their home community and environment. The purpose of independent living is not to get a job. We'll see when we talk more about vocational rehabilitation services, it's about going to work. So again, we have independent living services, which can include modification of providing ramps, providing assistive technology types of equipment, those types of services. The trust funds also help to establish the first independent living center on the Navajo Nation, which is Assist to Independence, and it's located in Tuba City. My understanding, it's the only native lands-based independent living center in the country, and it is in Tuba City and provides the core areas of independent living center services. And I would really encourage youth and parents to visit the Center for Independent Living. They provide also advocacy services to youth with disabilities. So next slide. There are there's 84 American Indian VR programs across the country, as I mentioned. Here in Arizona, there are 6. Navajo Nation, and I'll be sharing a little bit more information about the Navajo Nation program. There is a program in Fort Mojave that does cover their tribe. Tribal lands extend like Navajo Nation, but their tribal lands extend into Arizona, Nevada, and part of California. Hopi has a program, as well as Tohono O'odham and White Mountain Apache. And the other program is Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. Next slide. Navajo Nation covers the tri-state region. We provide services to individuals residing on the Navajo Nation and on or near. As you can see, we have 5 agencies. Tuba City, well, we have offices in Tuba City, Kayenta. We have offices in Chinle, Fort Window Rock, Shiprock, and Crown Point and Gallup. And we have counselor and rehab technician teams in those offices. Next slide. Our eligibility requirement is very similar to what Tracy will be covering for Arizona RSA. However, individuals need to be an enrolled member of American Indian or Alaska Native tribe, live on or near the, for the Navajo Nation, on or near the Navajo Nation. They must have a physical, mental, or emotional impairment that results in a substantial barrier to employment. The individual is able to benefit in terms of employment outcome, and the individual wants to work and requires VR services to prepare for, secure, retain, or regain employment. So if an individual is at risk of losing their job after the employer has provided reasonable accommodations, for example, they can apply for vocational rehabilitation services to help them retain their job. Next slide. So we have, we'll come back to this slide, Rosa, but we do have collaborations with the state VR agencies in Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. And we'll talk a little bit about our partnerships with Sonoran Center and Project Search, but we'll come back to this slide, Rosa. Next slide. So the Navajo Nation provides vocational rehabilitations from a culturally relevant approach. And again, there's unique models that are provided. Navajo Nation bases its services on the basket and the teachings of the Navajo basket. And you'll see the 4 quadrants. It's our view of providing holistic services. You'll see the 4 main areas of a person's well-being: the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Hopi provides their services based on the planting cycles, and they have a unique approach to providing services. And Fort Mojave utilizes, well, the last time they were utilizing the medicine wheel approach to providing services. So again, I just want to emphasize that the approach for vocational rehabilitation in American Indian communities is based on the language and culture. Next slide. Again, I just want to go into a little bit more into the teachings of the Navajo basket and how this represents vocational rehabilitation services for the Navajo Nation, and how we perceive how the cycle of vocational rehabilitation should be provided. We look at this as a person's life and the different stages of a person's life. It's a person's life journey. One of the students earlier talked about the man in the maze, and how the man in the maze is a a person's life journey. Very similar. We look at the Navajo basket as a map of a person's life. It's the different stages of a person's life. It represents balance and harmony, known as Hojonja, or blessing way. The center spot of the basket represents the beginning of this world. The Navajo emergence is in the inner coils, representing birth. And so the Navajo basket is significant in life events from birth to a child's birth. It's used in weddings, blessings of a home, and healing ceremonies. And again, you'll see the holistic approach to vocational rehab based on the mental. We start from the east and looking at the mental piece. So we're talking about thinking, planning, doing, and then again, that part of resilience. So Navajo Nation utilizes a relationship-based approach when we work with individuals that come to our program. You heard me introduce myself and my clans earlier. Again, it's all about relationships and establishing that relationship and trust. And so you'll see to the east, it represents dawn and is the beginning of life, and the element there is air. And then as you go south, where it represents growth and warmth, the element is fire. And then as we go west, it represents the element of water and looking at change and implementing services. North is wisdom and clarity, and again, looking at stability and abundance, and the element there is earth. And so there's a lot of teachings around this Navajo basket. It represents our 6 sacred mountains, our stones, sacred stones, our 4 original clans. And you know, we only have so much time to talk about the teachings of the Navajo basket. So go to the next slide, Rosa. Some of the services that can be provided: counseling and guidance in vocational rehabilitation, assessment for determining eligibility. We can help provide for tuition, books, and supplies. And we always provide information and referral, assistive technology. And then, of course, culturally appropriate services. So native healing can be provided under vocational rehab services within the American Indian Vocational Rehab Services. Next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Tracy as she talks a little bit about Arizona Rehab Services Administration and what they're doing with regards to transition services.
Thanks, Paula. So some of the things that we are required to do based on our federal funding as well, and that we try and do on a regular basis, is make sure that we are outreaching and identifying any potential VR eligible students, looking at the provision of technology assistance for transition planning during IEP processes or individualized education plan processes, collaborating with our schools and other service agencies to facilitate transition and coordinate written plans for employment. So we try to the extent possible, and what that sometimes means is available staffing and time and all of those things, to be a part of those individualized education plan, transition planning processes, so that we can contribute our knowledge and information, as well as those resources that we're able to those processes for those youth, and identify services and activities that help move a youth towards that fulfillment of their post-secondary goals, whether that is going to be headed to the next phase of going into an education piece before they go into employment. Ultimately, our program is designed for employment, but there are steps along the way. So sometimes that journey may take them through doing some education to the next phase of employment. Next slide. So as you heard from Paula, we have some similar eligibility requirements. So the individual does have to have a physical, mental, or emotional impairment that results in a substantial barrier to employment. They have to be able to benefit in terms of an employment outcome. They have to want to work. You know, sometimes we see that motivator as the biggest issue, but we want to see them want to get out there and do the work. And the work has to be to either prepare for, secure, retain, or regain employment. So we are able to help those individuals who maybe are looking to advance, right, in their jobs. So maybe they came to us once before and their next phase, their disability is still causing a barrier for them to be working through and needing support for. So all of those are possibilities when we go forward. Next slide. So when to refer a student for services, the best time to refer is when the student's ready to begin talking about employment. But we have found that the earlier that they're referred, the better. So we are encouraging that students be referred at 14 because that gives us more time to develop skills as part of that. So we're looking at developing those skills because we can start at 14 in all of those different areas, maybe that self-advocacy area. And we now have other services like pre-employment transition services, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, that can help with that development and help students to start thinking about employment and what that looks like for them. We also partner with other entities and agencies to help us facilitate referrals as well, like the Division of Developmental Disabilities, to help support those individuals and getting the right paperwork to us for that eligibility process to be streamlined. We partner with Department of Behavioral Health Services as well to help support that referral process and be firm partners together in supporting that youth or individual to get those VR services that they need for employment. Next slide. So possible services for VR eligible students before high school, you know, they can be working with pre-employment transition services. We're going to talk a little bit more about those because those are very specialized services that can be provided to potentially eligible students. Vocational guidance and counseling, assessments, career exploration, information about community resources, work readiness activities, development of their individualized plan for employment, that plan that's going to lead them to that employment goal that they're looking to pursue. Next slide, please. So pre-employment transition services is something that's happened since 2018. And these services were basically a requirement under the Workforce Innovations and Opportunity Act that we spend 15% of our funds on providing these pre-employment transition services. These are unique services in the fact that they can be provided to individuals who are potentially eligible. So that means they don't have to be a VR client to get started with these services. They have to meet the eligibility requirements, which means they have to be between the ages of 14 and 22, a student with a disability. And so they're here to help that student kind of develop a career pathway and facilitate that transition from school to work. Next slide, please. When we talk about pre-employment transition services, there are 5 areas that we are working with. And so that's talking about having the student do job exploration counseling, helping them develop what is that goal that they want to do for work. Work-based learning experiences to give them that hands-on experience to help them be more successful in understanding how they function in different environments, as well as evaluate, hey, do I really like this or not? Counseling on opportunities for enrollment in comprehensive transition or post-secondary education programs and institutions of higher education. What school do I want to go to, and why do I want to choose that school, and what's it going to do for me in that career area that I've decided I want to pursue? Workplace readiness training, those skills that anybody needs for any job. So making sure that you get there on time, time management, working with those things that communicating with your boss or your coworkers that you need to know. And then instruction and self-advocacy, helping to understand those laws and those unique things that can help and support through any of these agencies that you may need, and how to speak up for yourself in those areas. Next slide. So possible services under the individualized plan for employment, and to be perfectly honest, any of our services are available to any of our clients at any of these points. We've had some students that have pursued some of these things during high school, but at this time, the direct job placement services typically are done after somebody graduates from high school. So that would be like your on-the-job training, community college or university education, vocational or technical training would be some of those services you might see more commonly after. So, and just keeping in mind that all services are individually based. And when we create a plan for employment, we're looking at that person as an individual. So those services are meant for that individual and that unique individual skills, abilities, and strengths, as well as their needs related to their disability. All right. Paula, anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted, thanks for covering all of that. I just wanted Rosa to go back to slide 20. And so Tracy, we can summarize with some of the collaborations with Sonoran Center and some of the other collaborations that we have. As I mentioned earlier, the Navajo Nation collaborates with Arizona RSA, not only Arizona RSA, but Arizona Department of Education, some of the schools, as well as in New Mexico and Utah. We also have developmental disabilities here on the Navajo Nation, and we also have working relationships with them. Navajo Nation has a program, workforce development, that offers employment opportunities, placement options for youth and students, as well as adults and individuals that have disabilities. So we work closely with our workforce development office. And Tracy, you want to talk a little bit about Sonoran Center, and then also a little bit about Project Search?
Yeah, so we also have developed a partnership with the Sonoran Center to provide some of those pre-employment transition services I was talking about to some of our partnering schools like Window Rock, who are getting those on campus with their students, as well as we've partnered with them for summer work programs. So that we can have students come in and do summer work-based learning experiences in their communities. And we've had some very great participation in that and successes with those programs. So we've seen some students placed in different areas around the community, and they've gotten some great experiences to learn about their abilities and strengths in a workplace. And then Project Search is another program that we are helping to support. And Project Search is actually designed to help individuals in a work setting as well. And so it's a longer term program than pre-employment transition services typically. But it does provide an employer, school and voc rehab relationship to kind of support individuals in a workplace learning skills that they may turn into employment at the end of that internship that they're doing. So they typically have several rotations within that employer setting. So for instance, if it were a hospital, they might be working in different areas of the hospital, like the cafeteria. They might be doing medical transport. And then they also might be working with the hospitality section of a hospital to kind of develop skills in different areas. This allows interns to learn about work in a work setting, as well as develops a relationship with that employer that they can potentially have a pool of applicants after that cohort has gone through the program. So it's developing an internal source of candidates that already have skills in that area. It's been a very successful program as well. Paula, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted to also say that we do have collaborative working relationships with the two tribal colleges here on the Navajo Nation, the Net College and Navajo Technical University. We also do our project search is in collaboration with University of New Mexico, and it's in the Gallup community of Gallup. And we work closely with DVR, Division of Voc Rehab there, and University of New Mexico. We also have strong working relationships with Northern Arizona University Institute for Human Development. They have, I think, AVERTAC presented yesterday, the American Indian Training and Technical Assistance Center presented yesterday. And of course, students also have the opportunity to apply with Navajo Nation scholarship. So in summary, we just wanted to, again, to encourage youth and students that your primary responsibility in transition is to decide on your own vision for the future. And the family, we also want to just encourage you to, or your role would be to encourage self-advocacy and encouraging your student or youth to take as much control in their transition plan as possible, while expressing needs of the family and encouraging and reinforcing expectation of the transition plan. And so as a VR counselor, counselors and as a VR program, we can help with vocational planning, career guidance, setting up work opportunities, on the job training, helping set up services through independent living, and then also participating in the transition planning and IEP team. So as long as we help coordinate all these activities, we all have a role to play in looking at your students' success. So thank you for allowing us to present. And